You are standing in the dealership parking lot, keys in your hand, staring at a truck that cost more than your first house, and something in your gut is telling you to hand those keys right back. You are not imagining it. Right now, in this year, 2026, hundreds of thousands of Americans are doing exactly that. They are driving brand new trucks back onto the lot and walking away. Not because the trucks broke down, because they finally sat down and did the math, and the math made them sick. The reason nobody warned them is the same reason nobody warned me. I found out the hard way, at 68 years old, in a truck I could barely figure out how to start. So stay with me. Before we are done, I am going to hand you a rust-proofing trick I traced all the way back to a military maintenance manual from the 1940s. One that can keep an honest old truck alive for 30 years, and it costs less than $20 in one Saturday afternoon. If you have a driveway and a pair of old work gloves, you already have everything you need. Let me tell you how I got here. 2 winters ago, I did the thing I swore I would never do. I walked into a shiny showroom with heated floors and free coffee, and I let a young man half my age talk me into a brand new full-size pickup. My old truck was 22 years old. It had a little rust on the rocker panels, the radio only got AM clear, and my son kept saying it wasn't safe. So I signed the papers. $71,000. Financed over 7 years. 7 years. I am 70 now. Do the arithmetic on that and you will feel the same cold drop in your stomach that I felt about a month later. Because here is what I learned, sitting in my own driveway, unable to figure out how to turn on the heat. The heat was behind a screen. The seat warmers were behind a screen. Everything I used to do with a knob or a lever now lived inside a giant tablet bolted to the dashboard, and half of it wanted me to log into an account. I grew up turning a key and pulling a choke. Now I needed a password to warm my own backside on a cold morning. And I sat there thinking, this is not progress. This is a trap dressed up as progress. But it was the piece of paper that came in the mail 3 weeks later that truly opened my eyes. Let me back up, because you deserve the whole story, the way I wish somebody had given it to me before I signed. The average new vehicle in America right now sells for a little over $48,000. But a full-size truck, the kind most folks my age actually want for hauling and towing and pulling a camper, that average runs closer to $60,000, and the loaded ones sail right past $70,000. Back in the year 2000, a comparable truck cost around $22,000. Now, I know things cost more over time. I lived through the 70s. I remember gas lines. But even after you adjust for all of that inflation, trucks have gotten far, far more expensive than the cost of living can explain. Something else is going on. And here is the first thing almost nobody tells you before you sign. The moment you drive that truck off the lot, it loses value faster than a melting ice cube on a July sidewalk. Industry researchers who track these things found that a new vehicle can shed around 20% of its value in the first 12 months alone. On a $60,000 truck, that is $12,000 gone in the time it takes to make your first 12 payments. You paid for a truck. You drove home with something worth $12,000 less. Nobody hands you that number in the showroom, because if they did, half of us would turn around and leave. So the tension isn't just the sticker, it is what happens after the sticker. Now, why are people returning them in 2026 specifically? Why now, and not 5 years ago? Because several slow-burning problems finally arrived at the same doorstep at the same time. And I want to walk you through each one, because every single one of them cost somebody real money that they will never see again. Let me start with the one that made me actually laugh out loud, and then made me furious. Picture buying a truck that already has heated seats built into it. The wires are there. The heating element is there. It is physically installed in the leather under you, but it will not turn on because you did not pay a monthly subscription to unlock it. That is not a story I made up to scare you. Back in 2022, One major automaker began charging owners around $18 a month to switch on seat heaters that were already sitting inside the car they had already bought. $18 a month. That is over $200 a year to rent a comfort that is already bolted into your own vehicle. Think about what that would have sounded like to your father. You buy the whole machine, every bolt and wire of it, and then a company reaches into your driveway and holds part of it hostage until you pay again every single month, forever. This is the direction these vehicles are going. Features you own, locked behind a monthly fee. Some manufacturers have floated the same idea for remote start, for advanced cruise control, even for extra engine power that the motor can already produce. And here is what the salesman does not say out loud. Those little monthly fees are designed to outlive the loan. You will finish paying off the truck in 7 years, and the subscriptions will keep right on billing your card in year 8, year 9, year 10. You never actually stop paying. That is the whole idea. That is why people are handing the keys back. Not because they cannot drive the truck, because they finally understood they were never going to be allowed to truly own it. But the subscriptions are only the part you can see. The part you cannot see is worse, and this is where I need you to lean in. When my truck threw a warning light that first winter, I did what I have done my whole life. I popped the hood, and I looked. And I could not find anything. Everything was covered in plastic shrouds. There were sensors I did not recognize. When I took it to a local independent mechanic, a man I have trusted for 30 years, he plugged in his diagnostic tool, and it told him almost nothing, because the truck's computer would only share the full information with the dealership. My mechanic looked at me and said, "John, they are locking me out. I can change your oil, but I cannot fix the brain of this thing anymore. Only the dealer can." That right there is the quiet heart of this whole story. For most of my life, a truck was something a handy person could keep running in the driveway. My grandfather could rebuild a carburetor with a coffee can of parts and a Sunday afternoon. My father taught me to set points and gap a spark plug before I could legally drive. That knowledge, that independence, was normal. It was expected, and it saved regular families a fortune, because you were never fully at the mercy of a repair counter. Then, slowly, the computers moved in. The first onboard diagnostic computers showed up in cars back in the 1980s. By the mid-1990s, they were standardized across the whole industry. At first, that was genuinely helpful, but over the decades, the manufacturers realized something. If the vehicle's most important information stays locked inside their own systems, then you have to come back to them. Every time, forever. People fought back. In the state of Massachusetts, voters passed a right to repair law back in 2012, forcing car makers to share diagnostic information with independent shops and owners. Folks voted for it overwhelmingly, because deep down people understand that when you buy a thing, you should be allowed to fix the thing. But the newest trucks send their data wirelessly now, streaming it straight back to the manufacturer, and the fight over who controls that stream is still being waged in courtrooms while you and I are standing in the driveway, locked out of our own machines. So here is what it costs you to not know this. When the dealer is the only one allowed to fix your truck, the dealer sets the price. A repair that my old mechanic would have done for $150 can turn into an $800 visit because you have nowhere else to go. Independence, the thing our whole generation was raised on, has been quietly engineered right out of the vehicle. And I know what some of you are thinking right now, because I thought it too. You are thinking, this is all fine for the fellow who is younger or handier or richer or lives out in the country with a big barn and a full set of tools. You are thinking, that is not me. I am past the age of crawling under a truck. My hands are not what they were. I do not have a lift or a heated garage. I want to talk straight to you for a minute, because this next part was built for exactly your situation. You do not need to be young. You do not need to be strong. You do not need a garage full of equipment. Everything I am about to give you, I did myself, at 70, with arthritis in my right hand, and a bad knee that tells me when the weather is turning. The whole point of what our grandparents knew is that it was simple. It had to be simple because they did not have money to waste and they did not have specialists to call. Simplicity was survival, and that same simplicity is what protects you now. Now, I have spent a long time pulling all of this together, the research, the old manuals, the conversations with mechanics, the hard lessons from my own driveway, and I put the most useful of it into a book. It is called First Moves, and it is the starting point I wish I had before I ever walked into that showroom. If you want to go deeper into any of this, into the buying decisions, the maintenance habits, and the ownership strategies that actually protect you, there is also Deep Mastery and the Senior System, which lays out the whole approach in a clear, step-by-step way built specifically for folks at our stage of life. You can find the details in the description below. I wrote these because I got tired of watching good people get taken, and I wanted to put everything in one place that a person could actually sit down with at the kitchen table. So let me give you something you can act on this very week, before we even get to the big finale. Before you ever consider a new truck, or if you already have an older one you have been told to give up on, do this one thing. Go out to your vehicle, take a photograph of the little sticker inside the driver's door frame, and write down the exact date of the last time the fluids were changed. Not just the oil, the transmission fluid, the coolant, the brake fluid, the differential fluid. I will tell you flat out, 90% of the trucks that get sent to an early grave do not die from a worn-out engine. They die from neglected fluids that were never changed on schedule, quietly destroying parts that would otherwise have lasted decades. A transmission flush costs a small fraction of a transmission replacement. That single habit, tracking and changing your fluids on time, is worth more than every fancy feature on that $70,000 dashboard, and it costs you a notebook and a pen. Now, therefore, if fluids are what keep the inside of a truck alive, you might be asking, what kills a good truck from the outside? Because I have seen plenty of trucks with perfect engines get hauled to the scrapyard. And the answer to that question is the very thing that is going to save you the most money of your life. The answer is rust. Let me tell you the number that stopped me cold when I dug into this. Studies on vehicle corrosion have found that road salt and moisture are responsible for a staggering amount of the damage that takes older vehicles off the road across the northern half of this country. Not engine failure, not transmission failure, rust. The metal simply rots out from underneath. The frame weakens, the brake lines corrode, and a truck that runs beautifully gets condemned for the one thing almost nobody bothers to prevent. Meanwhile, down in the dry southern states, you can find trucks from the 1980s still working every single day because they never met a winter road covered in salt. Here is the cruel part. The manufacturers know this. They could build these things to resist corrosion for 40 years. They do not, because a truck that rots out at year 12 is a truck that sends you back to the showroom to sign another loan. Your old truck dying is not a failure of their engineering. For them, it is the plan working exactly as designed. But our grandparents knew a secret, and this is the piece I promised you at the very beginning, so let me bring it all the way home. When I finally decided I was done being trapped, I went looking for how folks used to make machines last. Not cars, machines. Because before there was a truck in every driveway, there were tractors and tools and equipment that a farm family could not afford to replace, so they had to keep it alive for decades by hand. And I found the trail I was looking for in the old maintenance practices of the military going back to the 1940s. During the Second World War, the armed forces had an enormous problem. They had equipment sitting out in salt air, on ships, on beaches, in mud, in rain, all over the world. Metal was rusting faster than they could replace it, and replacing it meant losing the war. So the quartermasters turned to something farmers and shepherds had known about for hundreds of years. Lanolin, the natural grease that comes from sheep's wool. Think about it. A sheep stands out in the freezing rain and the driving snow its entire life, and its skin stays perfectly dry. because the wool is coated in this waxy, water-hating grease. Somebody a long time ago realized that if you take that same grease and spread it on metal, water simply cannot reach the steel, and salt cannot bite into it. The corrosion just stops. This is not a modern chemical. This is one of the oldest protective coatings known to working people, and it was written right into the maintenance handbooks of that era for protecting metal parts stored in harsh conditions. Now here is why this matters for you. Standing in your driveway this weekend with an old truck you were told to give up on, you can buy a lanolin-based rust protectant today. It comes in a can, and there is a version with a long, thin straw applicator made exactly for this purpose. A can costs somewhere around $15 to $20. You wait for a dry day, you slide a piece of cardboard under the truck so you do not stain the driveway, and you spray this stuff up inside the rocker panels, along the frame rails, inside the door bottoms, up in the wheel wells, all the hidden low places where salt and water collect and quietly eat your truck alive. It creeps into the seams. It clings. It even slows down rust that has already started, because it soaks into the surface and cuts off the oxygen. You do not need a lift. You do not need to remove anything. You do not need strong hands. You lie on a creeper or even a folded blanket, or you reach up from the side, and you spray. If your knees are like mine, you do the easy reachable spots yourself, and you hand the can to a grandchild for the rest, and you have just taught that young person something their generation was never told. One afternoon once a year, ideally in the fall before the salt trucks come out. That is the entire method. Let me put real numbers on what that saves you. A truck frame replacement, if it is even possible, runs into the many thousands of dollars, so much that shops usually just tell you the vehicle is totaled, brake lines rusted through, hundreds of dollars, and a genuine danger to your life. But the truck that gets a $15 can of lanolin sprayed into its bones every autumn can outlast 2 or 3 of the shiny new ones sitting on that dealer's lot. I have met men in the northern states running trucks past 25 and 30 years old, still solid underneath, and every one of them will tell you the same thing. They kept the salt off the metal. That is the whole secret. That is the thing the showroom will never, ever tell you, because a truck that lasts 30 years is a truck that never makes them another payment. So think about what we have really uncovered here. The new trucks cost more than a house used to. They lose 1/5 of their value before your first year of payments is done. They lock the heat and the comfort behind monthly fees that outlive the loan. They lock your trusted mechanic out of the computer so only the dealer can fix them. And they are built, quietly, on purpose, to rot out from underneath right about the time you finish paying, so the whole cycle starts again. That is why hundreds of thousands of people this year are looking at that shiny new truck in their driveway and looking at the reliable old one they were talked out of and driving the new one straight back. I nearly kept mine. I nearly told myself it was too late, that returning it would be embarrassing, that a man my age should just accept the modern world. But I remembered my grandfather and his coffee can of parts, and I remembered that independence is not something you age out of. It is something they hope you will give up on, and I was not ready to give it up. Let me give you a few more things I learned, because I do not want you walking away with just the headline. I want you walking away able to actually do this. If you already own an older truck, the kind with real knobs and a hood you can understand, the single smartest thing you can do is stop apologizing for it. Get the fluids current, as I told you. Get the lanolin into the frame this fall, and then find yourself an honest, independent mechanic and ask him one direct question. Ask him whether he can still read the diagnostics on your particular vehicle. On most trucks built before the newest wave of lockdown wireless systems, the answer is yes. And that yes is worth thousands of dollars to you over the coming years, because it means you are never trapped paying dealer prices for every little thing. If you are shopping and you truly need a different vehicle, do not let anyone rush you past the total cost. Take the sticker price, then add up what the insurance will run, because insurance on these expensive new trucks with all their sensors and cameras, has climbed dramatically since a simple fender bump that used to cost $300 can now cost thousands because of the cameras and radar units buried in the bumper. Add the subscriptions. Add the interest across all those years of financing. When you see the real number, the whole number, you will understand in your bones why so many people are handing the keys back. And here is a small mercy most folks never learn. In many places, there are cooling-off protections and return windows, and some dealers offer their own return policy in the first few days, precisely because so many buyers get home, do the math at the kitchen table, and feel that cold drop in the stomach. If you have just signed, and you are lying awake at night regretting it, do not assume the door is closed. Read your paperwork. Call the finance office. Ask directly what your options are within the first days. The worst they can say is no, and a surprising number of the time the answer is not no. I want to circle back to that piece of paper that came in my mail, the one I mentioned near the start, because I never finished that thought and you deserve to know. It was the projected maintenance and ownership schedule, the one they tuck into the glove box and nobody reads. And buried in it, in plain language, was the recommended dealer service intervals, and besides several of them, notes about software updates that could only be performed at an authorized center. Software updates. To keep my truck running properly, I would have to bring it back to them on their schedule, for the life of the vehicle, for things I could never do myself and my mechanic could never do for me. That was the moment it all came together for me. This was not a truck I had bought. This was a truck I had agreed to keep renting from them in 100 small ways until the day it rusted out and they sold me the next one. So I brought it back. My hands were shaking a little when I walked in, I will admit that. The young man was not happy. But I drove home in a borrowed car, and the next weekend I went and found a clean, honest, older truck, the kind I understood, from a fellow who had cared for it. I paid a fraction of what that new one cost. And the first thing I did, that very first dry Saturday, was slide a piece of cardboard underneath it and spray lanolin up into every seam of its frame, the same way a soldier might have protected his equipment 80 years ago, the same way a shepherd's grease has kept the rain off wool since long before any of us were born. That truck is going to outlive the payments I never have to make. Here is what I want you to carry away, and it is not really about trucks at all. Somewhere along the way, they convinced us that new means better, that complicated means advanced, and that the things our parents and grandparents knew were old-fashioned and best forgotten. But every one of those forgotten skills was a form of freedom. The knowledge to keep your own machine alive, to fix what you own, to make a good thing last 30 years instead of throwing it away at 12. That was never backwardness. That was independence. And independence is the one thing no showroom will ever sell you, because independence is the opposite of everything they are trying to do. You did not get older and lose your usefulness. You got older and accumulated exactly the kind of common sense that this whole system is counting on you to doubt. Do not doubt it. You were right all along. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean that. I told you about spraying lanolin into the frame to stop the salt from rotting a good truck out from underneath. So here is my question, and I truly want your answer down in the comments. What is the oldest vehicle you have ever kept running? And what was your secret for keeping it alive? Was it a truck? Was it a car? Was it your father's old machine that just refused to die? Tell me the year, tell me how many miles, and tell me the one trick that did it. I read these, and so do a lot of other folks who are trying to decide right now whether to keep the old one or get talked into the new one. Your comment might be the very thing that saves a stranger $70,000. And if you are the kind of person who believes that a thing you buy should be a thing you truly own, that you should be allowed to fix it, keep it, and pass it on, then you belong with the rest of us here who are quietly digging up all this practical knowledge that was very nearly taken from us. Come along with us. We are recovering the old skills one at a time, the ones that keep a little more money and a little more dignity in our own hands. Next time I'm going to show you the forgotten way people used to make a set of tires last nearly twice as long, a simple habit from the old service station days that almost everyone has stopped doing, and it costs you nothing but 5 minutes and a coin from your pocket. It is going to surprise you as much as the lanolin did. So stay close, keep that notebook handy, and do not let anyone tell you that knowing how to take care of your own things is a thing of the past. It is the most valuable thing you own. If you're still with me, there's more I want to share. Inside the Wise Living Circle, I walk you through the full Magnuson Moss refund process, picking up right where we stopped. And you can ask me your own question directly. A real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. You can cancel any time with one click.